It's after hours. I'm a mid-level engineer at a company where, I'll just say this plainly, our inventory system is essentially time slots, which is a whole other conversation for a whole other episode. But just know that when inventory breaks, it breaks in a very specific and very unhappy way. My tech lead and I have been pair programming all afternoon on a bug fix. We reviewed it together. We looked at it together. I said, "Does it look good?" And he said, "Yep, thumbs up." We shipped it. You already know where this is going. The alerts fire after hours. Inventory is out of sync. Things are wrong in a way that is both very clear and somehow also confusing. We roll back the bug fix. We fixed it. And somewhere in the middle of all of that, I do the math and realize that what we just broke costs more money than I make in a year, possibly significantly more. I was certain I was done. Like, start updating the resume certain. The thing is, my bosses laughed it off. Not in a dismissive way, in a "we've all been here, this is how it goes, fix it and move on" way. And I have thought about that reaction probably more than any other single moment in my career. Because what they were telling me, without saying it directly, was, this is not a firing offense. This is a tuition payment. Welcome to the part of engineering that doesn't show up in the classroom. That moment is why I believe what I'm about to tell you about seniority. Welcome back to Chaotic Commits. I'm Joanne, honest stories of building in modern tech. Today's episode is called Hotfix. Turns out, smart wasn't enough. And I want to talk about something I have very strong opinions about, which is what it actually means to be a senior engineer. Not the title, not the years of experience on your resume, not the LEET code score, what it actually means functionally, practically, in terms of what you can do and how you think to be senior. Because I've hired a lot of engineers. I've managed a lot of engineers. I've been the junior engineer. I've been the senior engineer. I've been the person deciding who gets which title and which responsibilities. And I have a lot of thoughts. So let's get into it. Here's the thing about the title senior engineer. Nobody agrees on what it means. And I'm not being glib about that. I mean, genuinely, structurally, across the industry, the definition varies so widely that the word has been stretched almost to be meaningless. Some companies hand it over at 3 years of experience. Some make you wait 8. Some care about technical scope. Some care about organizational influence, whatever influence is sometimes, right? Some care about whether you can run a meeting. Some honestly just care about whether the right people like you. I've seen engineers with 5 years experience operating at a level I'd call senior in every way that matters. I've seen engineers with 12 years on their resume who were not. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about what the actual difference is. Going back to the title of this episode, Hotfix, turns out smart wasn't enough. And that's actually the first thing I want to say directly. Intelligence, raw technical ability, how fast you can reason through a problem, how well you understand the theory, is table stakes. It gets you in the door. It does not make you a senior. So what does? Let me give you a concrete example. Imagine 2 engineers. Same background, same education, roughly the same technical knowledge base. You give them both the same problem. You're modernizing a legacy system to event-driven architecture, iteratively, one service at a time. Engineer A gives you a solid answer. Sensible event schema, clean service boundaries, good thinking on the migration order, textbook. Genuinely good. Engineer B gives you almost the same answer. But then they add, one thing I like to flag early, what does the downstream data layer look like? Because I've seen this exact pattern before. We did an EDA modernization in phases. The first few services went well, and then we turned on the next batch and the Postgres database started failing over. The events were fine, throughput was fine, but the downstream system wasn't built for that fan-out pattern, and nobody had accounted for it during the iterative rollout because each phase looked clean in isolation. By the time we saw it, we had a production incident instead of a design conversation. Same knowledge base, completely different output. The difference is that engineer B has been in that room. They have a specific memory of a specific thing going wrong. Not a textbook failure mode, a real one with a real timeline and a real postmortem. And that memory is now part of how they think about every EDA proposal they see. That's not intelligence. That's pattern recognition built from experience. And it is generally not replicable from a course or a blog post or even a really good mentor. You have to have shipped something that broke in exactly that way. Here's the other version of this I watched play out more times than I can count. You're in a design review. Some junior proposes the same EDA migration approach. It's technically correct. The architecture is sound. The event design is clean. You cannot poke a hole in the logic. And the senior engineer in the room says, "This looks good, but before we approve phase 2, I want to see the load projections on the downstream systems, not just the event layer." The junior engineer pushes back a little. The events are async. The consumer can throttle. And the senior engineer says, "I know. And in theory, that's right. But I've seen Postgres get quietly destroyed by a fan out that looked fine on paper, but the aggregate query patterns changed in ways nobody modeled. I'd rather have that conversation now than at 2 a.m. And here's the honest part. Sometimes the junior engineer is right. Everything was fine. It was async. It could throttle. Experience can mislead you, make you see ghost failures in new systems. That happens. But the senior engineer's instinct to slow down at that specific moment, to ask for specific evidence, that instinct was bought and paid for. It exists because at some point the check wasn't there and it mattered. Technical skills is the foundation, but the judgment you build on top of it, the ability to see around corners, to know which corner even exists, that comes from having shipped things. Watched them break, fixed them, and shipped them again. And critically, from having been in the room when something went wrong and having to own it. Having to own it. This is the part of the episode I feel most strongly about, so stay with me. Experience isn't time served. It's adversity processed. There's a version of 15 years in the industry where you do roughly the same kind of work in roughly the same kind of environment without ever truly being uncomfortable. Where nothing you shipped was critical enough to really hurt when it broke. Where your decisions were always reviewed by someone else before they went live. Where the feedback loop was long enough that you never really had to sit with the consequences. That's 15 years of experience in the same year, repeated 15 times. And I say that without judgment. A lot of environments are structured that way, but it doesn't compound the way real experience does. Real experience is you make a call. It was wrong and you own it. You shipped something, it broke in a way you didn't anticipate, and you had to figure out why at 2 a.m. with people waiting. You inherited a system you didn't build, and you had to understand it well enough to change it without burning it down. These things are not hazing rituals. They are literally the mechanisms by which engineering judgment gets built. The neural pathways of, I've seen this before, require having actually seen it before. There's a saying I love, which is, if you haven't taken down prod, are you actually a senior engineer? Okay, I'm half joking. You don't need to have caused a major outage to be a great engineer, but I'm half joking because the engineers I've worked with, who I trust with high stakes systems, Almost all of them have a prod story, a real one. And they've processed it. They know what they missed and why and what they do differently now. Let me close the loop on the story I started with earlier. After we rolled back the deploy, after the inventory was restored, after I'd done the math on what it costs and sat with it, really sat with it, I went back through every decision we made that afternoon, the review we did together, the "does it look good? Yep" exchange. That took maybe 30 seconds. The assumption we both made without saying out loud. The fix wasn't complicated. The mistake wasn't even that subtle. But I had never broken something at that scale before. I had never felt the specific weight of a number that large being attached to something I did. And because of that, I had never developed the instinct to slow down at exactly that kind of moment. What I learned wasn't the technical fix. I already knew how to roll back a deploy. What I learned was how it feels like to be in that room. The specific quality of that silence when the alerts fire and you know it's yours. And now that feeling lives in my body in a way that no amount of studying ever could have put it there. I have it now. When I'm reviewing something that touches inventory or payments or any system where the blast radius is large, something in me slows down, gets quieter. Asks one more question. That's not intelligence. That's a scar. And scars in engineering are frequently the most useful things you have. The bosses who laughed it off were not being cavalier. They were telling me that they had scars too. That the tuition had been paid in the room before, and the only real mistake would be not learning from it. Here's the thing though. Experience only makes you better if it's teaching you the right things. And that depends entirely on the environment you're gaining in it. Which brings me to the part of the conversation that I think doesn't get talked about enough. I want to talk about a pattern I've seen more times than I can count. I'm going to call it the big fish trap. Here's how it works. You join a company. Maybe it's your second or third job. Maybe it's a smaller team or a less technically demanding environment, and you are good. You are genuinely, measurably the strongest engineer there. You ship fast, you get trusted, you get promoted. People come to you with hard problems and you solve them. The feedback is consistently positive. And slowly, without noticing, your calibration drifts. You start mistaking best here for actually good. You stop seeking out discomfort because you're not uncomfortable. You stop having your assumptions challenged because the people around you don't have the context to challenge them. And the pond, which maybe wasn't asking hard enough questions to begin with, stops teaching you things. But it keeps telling you you're excellent. Then something shifts. You interview somewhere else, or you get a new manager who operates differently, or your company gets acquired and suddenly you're working alongside engineers from a very different environment and the ground shifts under you. The problems are harder. The systems are more complex. The people around you are operating at a level that exposes gaps you didn't know you had. And it's disorienting because you've been told for 3 years that you're senior, and now you're not sure what you are. I've seen this from both sides. I've been the hiring manager interviewing someone who was clearly a star at their previous company and was struggling to calibrate to a new level of complexity. And I want to be clear, that's not a character flaw. It's an information gap. They were operating on a map that was accurate for the last environment and inaccurate for this one. The painful part is that the gap is invisible until it isn't. You can't see your own calibration drift while it's happening. It's like gaining weight slowly. You don't notice until one day your clothes don't fit and you realize it's been happening for a year. The tell, in my experience, is is how someone responds to being challenged. Engineers who've been in hard environments long enough tend to get curious when they're pushed back on. Engineers who've been the biggest fish for too long tend to get defensive. Not because they're arrogant, but because their confidence has never been tested the way it's about to be tested. I'm not saying small companies are bad learning environments. They are not. Some of the best engineering education happens at small companies with hard problems and small teams where you own everything end to end. That can be extraordinary. What I'm saying is, size isn't the variable. Problem complexity is. Feedback loop quality is. Whether the people around you are going to push back on your assumptions or just defer to you because you're the most senior person in the room. The question to ask, and ask it honestly, is this environment still teaching me things I couldn't learn anywhere else? Or have I learned what it has to teach and I'm just comfortable? Comfortable is not bad. Comfortable has a place. But comfortable and growing are usually not the same thing. And senior engineering is a discipline that requires continuous recalibration. So let me land this. I'm not going to give you a checklist for what makes a senior engineer. Partly because I don't think checklists are how this works. And partly because if I did, you just optimize for the checklist and miss the whole point. What I'm going to give you instead is 3 questions. And I want to spend a minute on each one because I think they deserve more than just being listed. So first question, have you been in situations where your judgment was the deciding factor and you were wrong? Not wrong because someone told you so, wrong in a way you could see that had consequences that you had to fix. The prod incident I described at the top of the episode is the version of this, what sticks with me. I didn't just hear about what went wrong. I felt the weight of it. That weight is what changed my behavior. If your wrong calls have always been caught by someone else before they landed, you haven't yet developed the instinct that comes from owning the full consequence. That's not a moral failing. That's just information about what you still need. Second, have you worked alongside people who are meaningfully better than you at things that matter? Not a course, not a book, close to excellence. There's a specific thing that happens when you sit next to someone who is operating at a level above yours, and you can watch how they think in real time. The questions they ask, what they slow down for, what they instinctively flag, you can't get that from documentation or tutorials. You absorb it. And if you spent your whole career being the most senior person in the room, you've been deprived of that, which means that there's entire categories of instinct that you haven't developed yet. Third, is the environment you're in right now still asking you hard questions? This one is the most important and the hardest to answer honestly, because the comfortable answer is always yes, but sit with it. When did something last surprise you in a way that required you to genuinely rethink the assumption? When did someone push back on your design and turn out to be right? When did you feel the specific discomfort of not knowing something that you felt like you should know? If you're having to reach back more than a few months to answer that, the environment might have stopped teaching you. The engineers that I've seen grown fastest, the ones who've been genuinely senior in ways that hold up across contexts and companies and team sizes, are almost always the one who sought out the uncomfortable answer to those questions and acted on it, who chose the harder pond when they could have stayed comfortable, who treated being wrong as data rather than failure. Self-awareness, it turns out, is about half of seniority. The other half is prod incidents. That's episode 2 of Chaotic Commits. I'm Joanne. New episodes wherever you get podcasts. I'll see you there.